Have you ever wondered about the hidden chapters of biblical history, stories that lie just beyond the pages we often read? While Abraham is celebrated as the father of faith, known for his bond with Sarah and the lineage of Isaac, there is another woman whose name quietly shapes the destiny of nations, Keturah. Who was she? Why does her story remain shrouded in mystery, yet carry immense significance that ripples through history and into our modern world? In Genesis chapter 25 on verse 1, a single verse unveils a surprising revelation. Then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. This seemingly simple statement opens a gateway to a legacy often overlooked. From Keturah came 6 sons who would birth powerful nations, influencing the course of civilization, geopolitics, and even biblical prophecy. But this isn't just a tale of ancestry. It's a story of God's faithfulness, a reminder that His plans often unfold in ways far greater than we imagine. Before we continue, I want to ask you to leave a like on the video to support us. And if you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe to the channel and also click the notification bell. God bless you. Keturah's lineage weaves through the pages of history, from ancient trade routes bustling with spices and wealth to the profound intersections of cultures and faiths. Her descendants touched nations, from the Midianites, who were both allies and adversaries of Israel, to the Queen of Sheba, whose wisdom and treasures dazzled King Solomon. Could her story hold clues to understanding the complexities of the Middle East today? Prepare to delve into the life and legacy of Keturah, the third wife of Abraham, whose influence transcends her brief mention in the Bible. Together, let's uncover how her story enriches our understanding of God's promises, His plans for all nations, and how even the quiet characters in Scripture are used for extraordinary purposes. Keturah's story begins in Genesis, chapter 25, verse 1, where she is introduced as the third wife of Abraham. Though her name might be unfamiliar to many, her role in biblical history is significant. Abraham, after the death of Sarah, takes Keturah as his wife. Together they have 6 sons, whose descendants establish nations that leave an indelible mark on the ancient world. This union represents a continuation of God's promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, as declared in Genesis chapter 17, verse 4. Keturah's descendants contribute profoundly to the social, cultural, and economic frameworks of their time. Her sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuah, go on to populate regions in Arabia and beyond. This lineage forms part of the larger Abrahamic promise, extending the patriarch's influence far beyond the Promised Land. The significance of Keturah's story lies in how it connects ancient history with God's broader divine purpose, which includes all nations. Through Keturah, we see how God's plans often exceed human expectations. While Isaac remains the child of promise through Sarah, the sons of Keturah are not neglected. Abraham provides for them with material gifts and sends them eastward, as recorded in Genesis chapter 25, verse 6. This act not only secures Isaac's role in the covenant, but also ensures that Keturah's descendants can thrive independently, spreading Abraham's influence and legacy. Keturah's introduction also prompts reflection on the broader narrative of Abraham's life. Her role demonstrates how even in old age, Abraham continues to fulfill God's plans. The story of Keturah serves as a bridge, connecting Abraham's personal journey with the ongoing development of nations that stem from his lineage. This continuation reinforces the idea that God's promises unfold over time, often beyond what one generation can comprehend. Keturah's legacy extends to modern discussions about the interconnectedness of faith, history, and culture. Her descendants' impact on trade, geopolitics, and religious traditions highlights the enduring influence of the Abrahamic promise. Keturah's story invites believers to explore the broader implications of God's faithfulness and the ways in which divine purposes extend across generations. The death of Sarah marks a turning point in Abraham's life. Genesis chapter 23 verse 2 recounts her passing in Kiriath Arba, later known as Hebron. This deeply emotional moment leads Abraham to mourn for his beloved wife, highlighting the profound bond they shared. In this time of grief, Abraham also takes a significant step by purchasing the cave of Machpelah as a burial site, recorded in Genesis chapter 23, verses 17 through 20. This act not only secures a final resting place for Sarah, but also establishes Abraham's first legal claim to the Promised Land. At the age of 137, Abraham faces a period of transition. Despite his advanced age, he does not consider his life's mission complete. God's promise to make him the father of many nations remains unfulfilled. Genesis chapter 17, verse 4, affirms this covenant, ensuring that Abraham's lineage will continue to expand and bless the world. The marriage to Keturah is an essential part of this new chapter in his life, demonstrating that God's plans often extend beyond human limitations. Through Keturah, Abraham's role as a patriarch takes on a renewed purpose. Genesis chapter 25, verse 1, introduces their union with simplicity, yet its implications are profound. Some scholars suggest that their marriage occurred a few years after Sarah's death, around the time Abraham was 140 years old. This timeline reflects the extraordinary vitality and faithfulness of Abraham, who remains willing to participate in God's unfolding plan. The narrative of Abraham and Keturah teaches valuable lessons about resilience and faith. Abraham's willingness to embrace new beginnings, even in his later years, shows that God's purposes are not confined by age or circumstance. The union with Keturah serves as a reminder that grief, though deeply felt, does not signify the end of God's work in one's life. Instead, it opens the door to new opportunities for growth and fulfillment within his divine plan. As Abraham's story continues, his life with Keturah illustrates the breadth of God's promises. This chapter of his life reinforces the message that God's plans are always active, even when circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. The narrative highlights Abraham's enduring faith and willingness to serve as an instrument of God's will, ensuring that his legacy would impact countless generations. Keturah's identity is both intriguing and significant within the biblical narrative. Her name, derived from the Hebrew root meaning incense or perfume, suggests a connection to aromatic trade or cultural practices associated with spices. This name reflects a sense of value and purpose, aligning with her role in the divine plan. In Genesis chapter 25, verse 1, Keturah is simply introduced as Abraham's wife, while 1 Chronicles and chapter 1, verse 32, refers to her as his concubine. This dual designation reflects the complexities of familial structures in the patriarchal era. Some ancient rabbinical discussions propose that Keturah might have been Hagar, Abraham's concubine who bore Ishmael. This theory suggests a possible reconciliation and return, with her new name symbolizing a spiritual transformation. However, modern scholars generally view Keturah as a distinct individual, as Genesis clearly introduces her as a new figure in Abraham's life. Her sons' names and genealogies are entirely separate from Ishmael's, reinforcing her unique role. Keturah likely originated from the Arabian region, given the geographical connections of her descendants. Her lineage ties Abraham's influence to new territories, demonstrating God's plan to expand the patriarch's legacy. Keturah's introduction into Abraham's life reflects divine timing, as she arrives during a phase when his role as the father of many nations was still unfolding. Through her, God continued to fulfill his promise to Abraham, extending his lineage and impact. Keturah's story highlights the inclusion of different peoples in God's overarching plan. While Sarah and Isaac remain central to the covenant, Keturah and her sons represent the broader reach of God's blessings. Her role underscores the diversity within the Abrahamic promise, showing how God's purposes extend to multiple nations and cultures, fulfilling his covenant in unexpected ways. By examining Keturah's background and significance, we gain a deeper understanding of how God weaves together different threads of history. Her inclusion in Abraham's story reinforces the idea that every person has a role in his plan, even if their narrative is less prominently featured. Keturah's legacy reminds us of the intricate and expansive nature of God's work through human history. Keturah bore 6 sons for Abraham, each of whom became the patriarch of significant nations. Their names, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, are recorded in Genesis, chapter 25, verses 2 through 4. These sons formed lineages that played crucial roles in the development of ancient civilizations, expanding Abraham's influence far beyond the Promised Land. Through them, God's promise to make Abraham the father of many nations continued to unfold. Zimran, the eldest, likely settled in Western Arabia, where his descendants engaged in trade and cultural exchanges. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan, two lineages renowned for their wealth and prominence in the spice trade. Sheba, associated with southern Arabia, is linked to the famed Queen of Sheba, who visited Solomon in 1 Kings, chapter 10. Dedan became a significant commercial center in northwest Arabia, referenced in prophetic texts like Ezekiel chapter 27. Medan and Midian, the third and fourth sons, established tribes with strong cultural and economic ties. The Midianites, in particular, feature prominently in biblical history. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was a priest of Midian, as mentioned in Exodus chapter 3. Ishbak and Shua, though less prominent in biblical narratives, contributed to the expansion of Abraham's lineage, with their descendants spreading to northern regions. Keturah's sons illustrate the diversity of Abraham's legacy. Each lineage developed unique identities, contributing to trade, governance, and cultural advancements in the ancient Near East. By sending them eastward with gifts, as recorded in Genesis chapter 25 verse 6, Abraham ensured their independence while safeguarding Isaac's role as the primary heir. This arrangement highlights Abraham's wisdom in balancing familial relationships with God's covenantal priorities. The narrative of Keturah's sons reveals the depth of God's promises to Abraham. While the covenant focused on Isaac, the broader Abrahamic blessing extended through these additional lineages. Their stories demonstrate how God's plan encompasses both central figures and those who work behind the scenes to shape history. Through Keturah's sons, the Abrahamic legacy became a cornerstone of ancient civilizations, fulfilling God's promise to bless all nations through him. Abraham's life offers a profound lesson in wisdom and obedience, particularly in how he handled the division of his inheritance. As recorded in the book of Genesis, chapter 25, verses 5 and 6, Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. This decision was not simply a reflection of personal preference, but was deeply rooted in God's divine covenant. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 19, God had declared that his covenant would be established with Isaac, the son of Sarah, making Isaac the rightful heir to both the spiritual and material blessings promised by God. However, Abraham did not neglect the sons of Keturah or Hagar. While Isaac received the primary inheritance as the chosen heir of the covenant, Abraham distributed gifts to the sons of his concubines, as noted in Genesis chapter 25 and verse 6. These gifts were not mere tokens, they were substantial provisions, likely including livestock, servants, and wealth, enabling Keturah's sons to establish their own legacies in distant lands. By giving these gifts and sending them to the east, Abraham demonstrated foresight and a desire to prevent future conflict over the Promised Land. The act of sending Keturah's sons eastward served multiple purposes. Strategically, it ensured that Isaac's inheritance in Canaan remained uncontested, preserving the purity of the covenant lineage. At the same time, it expanded Abraham's influence, as Keturah's descendants settled in regions that would later become critical trade and cultural hubs. This careful balance between honoring the covenant with Isaac and providing for his other sons reflects Abraham's understanding of God's plan and his commitment to fairness and harmony within his family. This division of inheritance also underscores the broader narrative of God's promises to Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, God promised that Abraham would become the father of many nations. While this promise was fulfilled primarily through Isaac, the lineage of Keturah's sons contributed to the formation of distinct nations and peoples, spreading Abraham's legacy across a wider geographical and cultural spectrum. Their settlement in the east laid the groundwork for the flourishing of trade routes and interactions that would shape the ancient world. Abraham's approach to dividing his inheritance highlights his role as both a father and a servant of God. By faithfully adhering to God's covenant while ensuring the well-being of all his children, he set a precedent for leadership and stewardship. His actions remind us of the importance of aligning personal decisions with divine guidance, ensuring that both justice and obedience are upheld. The descendants of Keturah had a profound influence on the history of the ancient Near East, particularly in the areas of trade, culture, and interactions with other civilizations. Genesis chapter 25, verses 2-4, lists the 6 sons of Keturah, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, and briefly mentions the nations and tribes they established. Each of these sons contributed to shaping the geopolitical and cultural landscape of their time, fulfilling God's promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. The Midianites, descendants of Midian, played a particularly prominent role in biblical history. In Genesis chapter 37, verse 28, the Midianite merchants were responsible for buying Joseph from his brothers and later selling him into slavery in Egypt. This act, though tragic, ultimately led to the preservation of Abraham's family during a time of famine, showing God's sovereignty even in human failings. Later, in Exodus chapter 18, Moses' father-in-law Jethro is described as a priest of Midian. Jethro's wisdom and faith in God contributed significantly to Moses' leadership, as he advised him on establishing a system of judges to govern the Israelites. Exodus chapter 18, verses 13-27. The descendants of Jokshan, particularly his sons Sheba and Dedan, are linked to the prosperous trade networks of the Arabian Peninsula. Sheba, associated with the region of modern-day Yemen, became renowned for its wealth in spices, gold, and other resources. The Queen of Sheba, who visited King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 1-13, is thought to be a descendant of this lineage. Dedan, on the other hand, is frequently mentioned in the Bible as a center of trade, including in Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 20, where it is described as a hub for goods like precious fabrics and chariots. These connections highlight the economic and cultural contributions of Keturah's descendants. Archaeological discoveries further confirm the presence of these lineages in significant regions of the Arabian Peninsula. Inscriptions and ancient trade records from areas like Dedan, modern-day Al-Ula in Saudi Arabia, reveal the influence of these tribes on the development of trade routes. The Midianites and other descendants of Keturah were instrumental in maintaining caravan trade, which linked the Fertile Crescent, Egypt, and the Arabian Peninsula. These routes not only facilitated the exchange of goods, but also the transmission of ideas and cultural practices. The impact of Keturah's descendants extended beyond commerce and culture. They often interacted with the Israelites, sometimes as allies and other times as adversaries. For instance, in Judges chapters 6-8, the Midianites are depicted as oppressors of Israel, leading to the rise of Gideon as a judge and military leader. Despite these conflicts, the lineages of Keturah preserved some knowledge of the Abrahamic faith, as seen in figures like Jethro. This preservation underscores how God's promises to Abraham extended even to his secondary lineages, demonstrating his faithfulness and providence. Keturah's descendants had a profound influence on the ancient world, shaping the cultural, economic, and geopolitical landscape of their time. Her 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, each became patriarchs of distinct nations. These lineages left their mark on trade, politics, and religion, fulfilling part of God's promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. This historical impact is evident in the trade routes, alliances, and interactions recorded in biblical and extra-biblical sources. Zimran, Keturah's firstborn, is believed to have settled in the western regions of Arabia. Historical and archaeological studies suggest his descendants became merchants, especially in spices and incense. Similarly, Jokshan's sons, Sheba and Dedan, established themselves as major players in trade. Sheba became renowned for its wealth and connection to the famed Queen of Sheba, while Dedan flourished in northwest Arabia, becoming a hub for commerce and a center of cultural interaction. The mention of Dedan in prophetic books like Ezekiel highlights their importance in the biblical narrative. Medan and Midian also contributed significantly to the ancient world. Medan's descendants possibly merged with neighboring tribes, while Midian became a dominant civilization in the regions near the Gulf of Aqaba. The Midianites are frequently mentioned in the Bible, both as allies and adversaries of Israel. Notably, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was a priest of Midian and played a pivotal role in guiding Moses during his leadership of the Israelites. The cultural and religious depth of the Midianites highlights their integration into the broader Abrahamic tradition. Ishbak's lineage is less explicitly detailed in the Bible, but historical references and archaeological records suggest his descendants spread across northern Arabia. Likewise, Shua's descendants are connected to regions near Mesopotamia. One notable figure associated with Shua's lineage is Bildad the Shuhite, a friend of Job, demonstrating their presence and influence in biblical wisdom literature. The trade routes established by these descendants were vital for the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures. They connected the Fertile Crescent with Arabia and beyond, influencing civilizations far removed from their original settlements. Ezekiel's references to Dedan and Sheba as trading partners underline their strategic importance. These routes later evolved into the famous incense and spice trade routes, which persisted for centuries and shaped the economies of the ancient world. The descendants of Keturah continue to hold significance in the modern geopolitical landscape, with the regions they historically occupied corresponding to some of the most strategically vital areas in today's world. These territories, which stretch across parts of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and Jordan, remain central to global trade, politics, and cultural identity. The ancient patterns of settlement and commerce established by Keturah's sons have left an enduring legacy that still shapes the Middle East. The ancient trade routes developed by Keturah's descendants, such as the spice and incense routes, formed the foundation of economic activity in the region. These routes connected the Arabian Peninsula to the Mediterranean and beyond, serving as arteries for goods, wealth, and ideas. Today, these same regions are vital for the global economy, with key waterways such as the Red Sea and the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb playing a central role in international trade. The historical significance of these routes is echoed in modern infrastructure projects that aim to enhance global commerce, such as the Belt and Road Initiative. The descendants of Midian, one of Keturah's sons, traditionally occupied areas near the Gulf of Aqaba, which today corresponds to parts of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. These areas remain crucial as geopolitical intersections between Asia, Africa, and Europe. Similarly, the regions associated with Sheba and Dedan, grandsons of Keturah, are now vital parts of Yemen and Saudi Arabia. These areas are not only economically strategic, but also geopolitically contested, reflecting the enduring importance of their locations. Modern conflicts and alliances in the Middle East often align along tribal and cultural lines that trace back to the ancient divisions established during Keturah's time. The Bible notes in Genesis chapter 25, verse 6, that Abraham sent Keturah's sons eastward, creating distinct spheres of influence. These divisions shape the tribal and cultural identities that persist in the region today, influencing political dynamics and social structures. The wealth and natural resources found in these territories, such as oil and gas, have added a new dimension to the historical importance of Keturah's descendants. The abundance of resources in areas historically connected to Keturah's lineages has made these regions pivotal in global geopolitics. Prophecies such as those in Isaiah chapter 60 verse 6, which speak of gold and incense from Sheba, resonate with the modern reality of these lands as sources of wealth and power. Keturah's story holds profound spiritual lessons that extend far beyond the pages of the Bible, offering insights into God's faithfulness, inclusivity, and overarching plan for humanity. Her union with Abraham, occurring later in his life, demonstrates God's ability to work through unexpected circumstances to fulfill his promises. Even after the birth of Isaac, the child of the promise, God used Keturah and her descendants to expand the Abrahamic influence, highlighting his commitment to blessing all nations. The preservation of aspects of Abrahamic faith among Keturah's descendants underscores God's intention to use diverse peoples and cultures to carry his truth. Jethro, as Moses' father-in-law and a Midianite priest, provides a striking example of this in Exodus chapter 18, verse 11, where he declares, "Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods." This acknowledgement demonstrates how the knowledge of God extended beyond the immediate covenant lineage, reaching other tribes and peoples through Abraham's extended family. Through Keturah, God illustrates that his promises often exceed human understanding. While the primary covenant was established through Isaac, the blessings given to Abraham's other sons reflect a broader divine purpose. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, God told Abraham, "In you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Keturah's story is a testament to this promise, as her descendants played a significant role in shaping cultures and civilizations, furthering God's plan for humanity. The spiritual implications of Keturah's story remind believers that God's purposes are inclusive and far-reaching. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9, declares, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse beautifully encapsulates how God uses individuals like Keturah, who might seem secondary in the narrative, to accomplish extraordinary things. Finally, the dispersion of Keturah's descendants serves as a parallel to the Christian mission today. Just as her sons carried elements of Abrahamic faith to new lands, believers are called to spread the gospel to the uttermost parts of the earth, as described in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Keturah's legacy challenges modern Christians to see themselves as part of God's ongoing plan, to share his love and truth across all cultures and generations. Keturah's story, though often overlooked, carries a timeless relevance that continues to resonate through history and into the present day. In Genesis chapter 25, verses 1 through 4, the brief mention of her union with Abraham opens a window into a narrative filled with historical, geopolitical, and spiritual significance. Her 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, became the patriarchs of nations that influenced the ancient world, spreading Abraham's legacy far beyond the borders of the Promised Land. The descendants of Keturah played pivotal roles in shaping trade, culture, and politics in the ancient Middle East. The trade routes they established, particularly those involving spices, incense, and other goods, became critical economic corridors that linked civilizations. References in Ezekiel chapter 27, verses 20 through 22, highlight the significance of these routes, which were vital for commerce and cultural exchange. The prosperity of these trade networks laid the groundwork for interactions that would shape the social and economic landscape of the region for millennia. Spiritually, Keturah's story reinforces God's faithfulness to his promises. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 4, God declared to Abraham, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations." Through Keturah, this promise extended beyond Isaac's line, demonstrating the inclusivity of God's blessings. While Isaac carried the primary covenant, the other sons of Abraham, including Keturah's children, were also recipients of divine favor, as seen in the gifts Abraham gave them before sending them eastward in Genesis chapter 25, verse 6. Keturah's legacy also highlights the interconnectedness of nations and their shared histories. Her descendants, such as the Midianites, Dedanites, and Shebans, appear in various biblical accounts, interacting with the Israelites and other neighboring peoples. These interactions, ranging from trade alliances to conflicts, reveal the complexity of relationships between Abraham's extended family and the broader ancient world. For instance, the story of Jethro, Moses' Midianite father-in-law, in Exodus in chapter 18, underscores the mutual influence between these lineages. Finally, Keturah's story serves as a reminder of the enduring impact of God's plans. Her descendants' influence persists in modern geopolitics, with their territories aligning with key regions in today's Middle East. The principles of faith, resilience, and cultural exchange embodied by Keturah's lineage continue to inspire reflection on how God's promises unfold across generations. This narrative invites believers to appreciate the depth of God's purpose, which often transcends individual lives and reaches into the broader fabric of history. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel to keep following more biblical stories like this one. Your participation is very important to us, and we want to hear your opinions and suggestions. May God bless you. Click on the video appearing on your screen to keep exploring more incredible stories like this one. Don't miss the chance to dive deeper into the fascinating chapters of biblical history.